This boat, which connects the United Kingdom to the continent, is the symbol of unity between Europe and the British.
So we cannot allow for Brexit to be watered down. We cannot allow for it to be delayed. We cannot allow for a transition period to go on until the next general election. We've got to stand up and fight again. And we are going to win. We are going to win. We are going to win.
Have the British lost their legendary stiff upper lip? For the Brexiteers, the referendum was an opportunity to vent their anger. You only need to look at the electoral map to realise the extent to which Brexit has split the country in two. The pro-Europeans are in London and in big cities like Liverpool, as well as in Scotland and Northern Ireland. The Brexiteers, meanwhile, are concentrated in small towns, the countryside, and wealthy areas in South London. Only 1 million votes separate the Brexiteers from the Remainers, 1 million out of 33.5 million voters. But it has brought about a complete breakdown.
It was an angry demand to be heard. They feel that established rules did not deliver fair outcomes in our country. They felt that established political parties, were not representing the interests of ordinary working people in our country. They felt that the whole country was run in the interests of people who were protected and privileged, whereas they were exposed. And I've been a member of Parliament, remember, in the north of our country, many, many, many miles away from London. So I understand this feeling that, let's show those people that we count again. Let's show those people in London that, we can say no. Let's poke them in the eye so that they listen to us.
To understand the social and political chaos taking place in the country since the referendum, you need to go back to 2016. For 5 months, out activists, also known as Brexiteers or Leavers, battled in supporters, aka Remainers. Full of lies and fake news, the 5-month campaign was set against a backdrop of patriotism and nationalism. Among the most inflammatory Brexiteers was Nigel Farage, the charismatic leader of UKIP, the Europhobic UK Independence Party.
If you really go back to that referendum campaign, what was it actually all about? Do we stay part of a European political union and say we're better off as part of a bigger entity? Or do we vote for independence? And we voted for independence. And independence means you make your own laws, you control your own borders, you have your own courts, you are a country.
What the Brexit campaign succeeded in doing is taking an issue that only a portion of the country are really concerned about, which is sovereignty, and linking it to immigration. They said, we can't control our borders because we're not in charge of our laws. And then they persuaded people that that was something that directly affected them, that somehow their jobs were at threat or their housing was at threat. It's what's always used to scare people about immigration.
Immigration as the explanation of every problem, a slogan which also resonates in the UK. During the campaign, the small town of Boston on the UK's east coast became the Brexiteers' chosen symbol of the anti-immigrant propaganda. And this is no coincidence. Since 2004 and the enlargement of the EU, the region has welcomed migrants from Eastern Europe. A decade later, these migrants represented 10% of the regional population. Result? 75% of Boston voted for Brexit, a national record, but it is based on lies.
It's
qui était en cause, c'est l'immigration venant de pays européens, c'est-à-dire la libre circulation au sein de l'Union européenne. Le grand débat au Royaume-Uni, il a été là-dessus, c'est-à-dire par rapport à des Polonais, à des Bulgares qui venaient, au nom de règles européennes, travailler au Royaume-Uni.
Il y a 3,5 millions de personnes européennes qui travaillent et vivent au Royaume-Uni, qui travaillent au service de l'économie britannique. Et ils ne sont pas arrivés par hasard, ils ont été accueillis. Donc ça c'est pas de la migration, c'est la liberté de circulation actuelle qui caractérise l'Europe.
The anti-immigration campaign gained ground in the polls. Nigel Farage decided to go further and threw more into the mix. He not only criticised Eastern Europeans, but also majority Muslim migrants from the war-torn Middle East. The campaign is called Breaking Point. Farage plastered posters all over the UK saying, "We must leave the European Union and take back control of our borders." But the photo behind the slogan triggered reactions in the press.
Why are you picking on people's misery? All of the people in that picture behind you are fleeing atrocities in Syria.
How do you know that?
And you've got them on a picture to do with our membership of the European Union.
Well, a refugee, all right, and we've had this since the Geneva Convention of 1951, is somebody fleeing in fear of their life because they're going to be persecuted because of who they are or what they are.
The people behind you are all fleeing for their lives from a war in Syria.
You don't know that. You don't know that. They're coming from all over the world. In fact, the estimate was that fewer than 1 in 5 that were coming in that big wave last year were coming from Syria.
Nigel Farage is telling a whopping lie and he knows it. The photo he used and distorted was part of a report by press photographer Jeff G. Mitchell, published on the 23rd of October 2015. Photographed in Slovenia, on the border with Croatia, these refugees were fleeing from a war in Syria and the Middle East. Despite this blatant twisting of the facts, the poster was never taken down. 2 years later, Nigel Farage still stands by it. It has even been copied by European nationalist movements.
That Breaking Point poster was ahead of its time. I mean, that Breaking Point poster was actually used by Viktor Orban in his Hungarian campaign. That Breaking Point poster is the reason that you now have a completely brand new government in Italy. It was absolutely the right thing to say at the time. Now, sometimes, you tell the truth and people find it a bit difficult, but I don't resile from it one little bit.
Were the British taken advantage of by this poster? Or were they enticed by anti-immigration slogans?
It's over.
Oh, God. What? Are you absolutely mental or something? Have you actually considered what leaving would mean?
You're so patronising.
Though they have undoubtedly lost a little of their composure, the English have held on to their famous sense of humour. Since the referendum, television and websites are full of satirical films like this one. Broadcast by the BBC, this mini-drama is called Breaking Up with a Remainer.
We have problems, but it's better to be inside the relationship pissing out than outside the relationship pissing in. If you leave, I'm keeping all the cheese, okay?
Okay.
You'll starve.
Bye, Frank.
Racist!
Boris Johnson is the other big star of the campaign. He's the official figurehead of it. He also uses immigration as a propaganda weapon. This time, not from an identity, but an economic standpoint.
Do we want to be sucked into a federal superstate? No, we absolutely don't.
MP and Mayor of London from 2008 to 2016, he is the man who has led the Eurosceptic rebellion from within the Conservative Party, the party in power. And to convince the electorate, he goes up and down the country aboard a bus denouncing what Europe costs the British economy.
And if we vote leave on June the 23rd, we can take back control of £350 million a week and spend on our priorities here in this country, including on the National Health Service. We can take back control of our immigration system.
Where will this £350 million come from? For Boris, it covers the money the UK contributes every week to the EU budget. The problem is that the Brexiteers deliberately forgot to consider the benefits that the EU repays Britain. The discount on European contributions obtained by Margaret Thatcher. Aid from the Common Agricultural Policy. Funding for poor regions. Interest on British capital in the European Investment Bank. The UK actually pays the EU £130 million every week. That's 2.5 times less than Boris Johnson maintains. Even his own party are far from agreeing on these assertions.
I was very careful with the figure, and I would have had them change it. But look, what is the truth about why they did that? They said one day, they gave in. It's like, all right, we'll get the bus repainted, and they came back with £50 million a day. Why did they keep doing it? Why did they double down on it? To get publicity.